President Trump continued his attacks against Congressman Conor Lamb again yesterday, sending a tweet in which he called the Pennsylvania congressman an American fraud and falsely saying that Lamb voted for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. Congressman Lamb was one of 15 Democrats who did not vote for Pelosi in 2019. The tweet, which this time corrects the misspelling of Lamb's last name, is nearly identical to President Trump's post on Memorial Day when he criticized the Pennsylvania congressman and Marine Reserve officer while endorsing his Republican challenger, Army combat veteran Sean Parnell. And Congressman Conor Lamb of Pennsylvania joins us now. He is vice chair of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs and a former federal prosecutor and U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Congressman Lamb, thanks for being with us this morning. I'll let you state for the record, did you vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House?
No, I voted for my good friend Joe Kennedy, but that isn't what this is about. You know, that's just I think that's the latest effort to distract from what the real issues are in parts of the country like mine.
And let me ask you about your military service. He called you an American fraud. When you graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Law, you probably could have done anything. Why did you go to officer candidate school, the United States Marine Corps?
You know, we were a country at war at the time, still are, obviously, and I had a lot of friends that served, so I thought I could do my part. And, you know, joining the Marines, it seemed like the toughest test and the chance to serve with the best. So, yeah, really fortunate to have gotten to serve with those guys. And, you know, the Marines know what service is, and it's not about attention or recognition. Although I did serve under this commander-in-chief as a reservist, and I'm proud of that service, too.
And we should point out your opponent, Sean Parnell, also served honorably with the United States Army in Afghanistan. I want to ask you, Congressman Lamb, about what's going on with veterans in this country. We've talked about long-term care facilities in places like New Jersey and up in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and the state of Pennsylvania as well. Veterans not being looked after the way they should be, not being looked after the way they were promised to be in exchange for their service, especially among our older veterans. How can we do better as a country, and how specifically can governments do better to step in and protect veterans?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing is in a lot of the state-run veteran homes, there were some outbreaks early on that have just been very difficult to control. And that's the same with a lot of senior care facilities around here. And so what we have to be doing is really going into these places and taking charge, putting new people in charge if that's what it takes, extra resources, you know, deploying the National Guard. And this is an area where honestly, I would commend the federal Secretary of Veterans Affairs. He's been on the spot with this. He's been offering teams from the National VA to go into these places and help the states that run these homes. You know, but you notice over time that there's a lack of urgency and attention from the people at the highest levels to really go in and take charge of these places and do what needs to be done. And there seems to be a constant kind of shifting of blame from the federal government to the states. And that starts at the top in the White House. And that's something that needs to change. I mean, we're all seeing the consequences now of people that didn't take the right actions early on.
Congressman, this is Claire McCaskill. I know in some ways Pennsylvania has some things in common with Missouri. You have pockets of blue. You have a lot of red out in the hitherlands and some purple areas that have gone back and forth. Talk about Western Pennsylvania right now. What is the situation in Western Pennsylvania? How are people feeling about the economy, about the coronavirus, about the leadership of this president and the impact this president has had on the agricultural economy?
Yeah, I think the important thing about voters in this area, Senator, like yours, is they're open-minded. You know, they listen to both candidates. It's not, you know, you kind of refer to red or blue areas, but that's really hard to separate out here. People are willing to cross back and forth, and that's what makes it a swing state. It's also what brought me into office, right? Sometimes I get the question from people, you know, how are we ever going to convince all these folks that supported the president in 2016? Well, obviously enough of them were open-minded, you know, that they turned to me in 2018. And so these people will give you a fair shot. The issue is that there were a lot of commitments made here in Western Pennsylvania in 2016, commitments on drug prices, on building infrastructure, on protecting Social Security and Medicare at all costs. And people are now starting to turn around and say, what happened to all that? I thought, the president said he was going to fix these things. And so those accounts are coming due. And I think he's going to have a difficult time matching up against someone like the vice president, who literally has a lifetime of public service committed to the middle class and who has always fought for these folks and their issues. And maybe that's why you're seeing some of these tweets and attacks, because it's distraction from that, what the issues really are out here. But people are asking about unemployment. They're asking about jobs. They're asking about how we're going to protect seniors in this nursing home. They're not asking about the president. He's not the issue here, and that might be something difficult for them to handle.
Jonathan Lemire.
Congressman, first of all, I'm sorry John Hallman's not on the show this morning so you guys could bond over the Wu-Tang Clan. I see the logo over your shoulder. He never leaves home without his either. But let me ask you instead about developments on Capitol Hill. What's the latest from Speaker Pelosi in terms of what is needed now for the next economic bailout, stimulus, relief package, however you want to call it? And what do you make of the reluctance from the Republican-led Senate, particularly in trying to infuse money to bail out some of these state and municipal governments who are so struggling right now and who may be forced to have widespread layoffs of municipal workers?
Yeah, I don't understand where some of these guys are from or who they're talking to, because, when you're at home and you're looking in real time at the consequences of a failed testing strategy, and you're talking to hospital workers that still don't have enough PPE, you're talking to firefighters that have never had enough PPE throughout this whole thing, you can't take all the responsibility from the federal government, shift it onto the states and local governments, and then say, but you're on your own when it comes to the money. Like those two things don't wash, and people understand that. And so I don't think that's going to last, this whole attitude of wait and see on the Republican side. That being said, I think we got some pushback on the speaker's approach of kind of going with this really large $3 trillion version when not all the first wave of money had been spent yet. So I think it seems like where the discussion's headed, at least around here, is, guys, keep your focus. Work on funding for state and local governments, maybe fill up the small business accounts again. Let's get another round of stimulus to people, because that was the only thing that didn't really get hung up in the bureaucracy. Unemployment and some of these other things have still been so slow. So people around here are pretty practical and common sense, and above all, they have no tolerance for us refusing to work together. They want to see people on both sides work together, and I think if we don't, there's going to be consequences for everybody.
Congressman Conor Lamb, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. And coming up, more on the lopsided effects of this pandemic. The head of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, joins us to explain his organization's plan to ensure that communities hit hardest by the virus are not overlooked. Plus, Mark gives his take on the horrendous killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. Morning Joe is coming right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.